Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will go over the most essential tools needed for crochet, that is hooks and yarn. There is a wide variety of hooks and yarns available in the market, and if you are just starting out, it can get overwhelming very easily. But don't worry, I will show you how to choose the correct tools for your project, as well as things you need if you are just starting out. Alright then, let's go ahead and get started. So one of the must-have items for crochet is a hook. A hook is this cylindrical stick with a hook on one end. This hook is used to pull the thread through a loop to create a crochet stitch. Hooks, they come in different sizes and materials such as aluminum, plastic, steel, and wood. The size of the hook is determined by the diameter of the hook's shaft. The hook size is usually marked on the hook. It could be labeled in letters, millimeters, or both, depending upon the manufacturer. Here you can see this hook size is marked in both letter and millimeters. It is size J, which is equivalent to 6 millimeters. Which size hook you use depends on the yarn you are using and how small or big you want your stitches to be. Smaller hooks are usually used with threads and thin yarns, and they make smaller stitches, while larger hooks are usually used with thicker yarn and make larger stitches. If you don't change the yarn size and just change the hook size, the bigger the size of the hook, the bigger the stitch will be. Similarly, smaller hook sizes will yield smaller stitches and hence a smaller end product. Here is an example of how different hook sizes affect the end product. I used same yarn and same number of stitches, but different hook sizes. As you can see, the bigger hook size on the left made a bigger fabric than the smaller hook size on the right. Since hook size can affect your final project, it is very important to choose the right hook size. So, how do you decide which hook size to use? There are 3 things that can help you decide this. The first one is a yarn label. Most yarn labels suggest a hook size to use with the yarn. Here is an example. This yarn label suggests to use hook size 5.5 millimeters. The second one is the pattern. Pattern is a set of step-by-step instructions for a crochet project, and it lists a recommended hook size. As you can see in this pattern, the recommended hook size is 5.5 millimeters. And finally, last but not the least, is the gauge size. Gauge size is nothing but the estimated number of crochet stitches per 4-inch square. This information is usually mentioned in crochet patterns and is labeled as gauge. It is recommended that you always make a 4x4-inch sample of the crochet project you are about to make, and make sure that the number of stitches and rows match the gauge listed in the pattern. This is to make sure the end product ends up the same size as mentioned in the pattern. If the swatch that you made does not match the gauge size of the pattern, you may need to change the hook size. Just remember that it is more important to match the gauge of a pattern than to use the exact hook size listed. So now that we have looked at hooks, the next must-have for crochet is yarn. There is an overwhelmingly large number of yarn types available in the market. Selecting which yarn to use depends on your projects and criteria such as whether it is machine washable or not, or how warm you want it to be, or if you want it to be lightweight. That is why it is important to learn to read the yarn label and also keep that label safe for future reference. We looked at the yarn label briefly earlier in the video. Let's look at it again. Here is a picture of yarn label. On the left side, you can see the gauge for both knitting and crochet. The 2 needles here indicate that this gauge is for knitting, while this one needle with a hook indicates that this gauge is for crochet. This tells us that using a 5.5 millimeters hook and this yarn, you should be able to get 16 rows of 13 single crochet stitches in 4x4 inch swatch. Next, this number shows how much the ball of yarn weighs. And this number here tells us how long the yarn is in this ball of yarn. Now this information is handy when pattern tells you how many yards of yarn you might need to finish that project. The next important piece of information is the weight of the yarn. Here weight refers to thickness or size of the yarn. Along with the hook size, thickness of the yarn also affects the size of the stitch. So it is important to pick the correct size yarn for your crochet projects. Finally, there is a recommended hook size for the yarn to match the gauge on the label. And there you have it, everything you need to know about the yarn for now. Now that we have enough information about hooks and yarns, let's do a quick overview of some of the other regularly used tools for crochet. They are measuring tape, sharp scissors, stitch markers, and a yarn needle. Measuring tape can be used when checking gauge and also body measurements for garments such as sweaters. Sharp scissors are used to cut the yarn when you have finished your project. Stitch markers are used to mark the stitches, as the name suggests. For example, when working in rounds, you can mark the beginning of the round by placing a marker in the first stitch. And finally, a yarn needle, which is a blunt tipped needle with a large eye to accommodate thick yarns and is used to sew pieces together or to weave in yarn ends when you have completed your project. So now with all this information, you may be wondering, what should I buy if I'm just starting out? In the beginning, all you need is medium worsted yarn, size 4, light color, aluminum hook size 5.5 or 6 millimeters, and sharp scissors. The lighter color yarn makes stitches more visible and makes it easier to identify and count stitches. I will have links for all of these in the description box below. And that's all for this video. Hope you found it helpful. If so, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.